right, this is the big story on Daybreak Live, where we bring clarity to the headlines and depth to the discussions that matter. Today, we spotlight a painful yet pressing issue: police brutality in Nigeria. From the streets of Ibadan to the suburbs of Port Harcourt, countless voices have risen, demanding justice, accountability, and reform. But has enough changed? And what hope is there for real transformation? Stay with us as we hear the facts, the stories, and the way forward. Good morning once again. The show is still Daybreak Live on Dominion Television. Today we'll be discussing police brutality in Nigeria. And I won't be doing that alone this morning. I have with me, all the way from Lagos, Oba Adeoye. He's a media strategist and, of course, a journalist. Good morning to you, Oba Adeoye.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on the show this morning. All right, there has been a lot of calls as regards the current spate of police brutality in Nigeria. And then I want to ask you this question this morning, and I would like to put you on the spotlight. Do you believe police brutality in Nigeria is a deliberate tool of state oppression or simply a case of poor training and discipline?
Okay, I think I will go with the second option that you just threw at me. I think it's a reflection of many years abroad that we've had. We are a people who pay attention to detail, and that is the representation of what we are saying. Starting from the process of our policemen, you can see lapses, you can see situations where processes are not transparent. It may not be a deliberate action made to suppress reflection or a result of what we have planted right now. Let's look at police recruitment. When was the last time you heard about police recruitment? Maybe you heard how many people around you who applied actually got the job based on merit and not those smart. So if you answer the question, the effect is as good as mine. So you cannot have such a rotten system and expect things to work perfectly. What about after recruitment? What is the level of the training that they expose these policemen to? The case is also as good as mine. Let me go back to recruitment. Then you will discover that most people who are wearing police uniforms are policemen on our roads, stations, did not really think out or dream to become policemen. They found themselves there as a result of not being able to get jobs elsewhere or not being able to make a living, maybe elsewhere. Some of them are poorly educated, their formal education is very poor. So you and I, we are road policemen on the road, their official language, speaking language, that's if they are not speaking Igbo or outside or when you come across them. So this, what you are seeing, political brutality you are seeing today, is a result of many years of fraud, many years of not paying attention to details that we are put in the system, and what we are seeing today is manifestation of that fraud. So I wouldn't say it's deliberate action of powers that be to support. Of course, it may happen in pockets of events across the nation, like we have, in recent history, maybe. But on the overall, I think it's a function of poor education and poor exposure of and of course poor administration can also tag as poor oversight process of people who are supposed to manage this institution. You keep on having this until we put certain measures in place, which includes two that I've mentioned, and also ensuring that people or policemen who run against rules of engagement, who go against the law, guiding police operations, are made full of law. there are instances, there are incidents where policemen were caught, hand in the cookie jar, and at the end of the day, the point where they committed that crime to another part of the nation. There was one in Lagos recently of a reported case of a policeman who raped a young lady in Lagos. And when that case was brought to the attention of police authorities, rather than punishing this policeman or probably, dismissing him from the force, we hear stories of man being, redeployed from Lagos, somewhere where nobody will know that. When we are ready, we'll start seeing result. You cannot keep doing the same thing, same way, and expect results.
All right, you talked about you talked about police officers who were actually caught, in the act of brutalizing Nigerians, and then eventually they walk free. Is this a result of systemic failure or political protection?
I think it's both. Systemic failure will lead to political protection when you don't have institutions, but they have strong people. You don't have strong institutions, they have strong people. So the strong people in charge of those institutions will end up manipulating the institution to suit them politically. So it's not just about now. Don't forget that police reflect kind of society where they operate. Police, you cannot divorce police from the Nigerian system. So what you are seeing playing out in the police is a result of protection of what has become of our society, where the law is no longer above people, but the people are above law. When politicians and their friends in these organizations, when they try to bend the rule of the system to suit their own political gain, you keep on having this kind of problem. It is a no-brainer. You cannot keep bending the law. You cannot be having stronger, stronger people than stronger institutions.
All right, Obadewe, let's go on a short break. The show is still Daybreak Live on Dominion Television. And of course, this segment is the big story. We'll be back after this time out. Welcome back from that short break. The show is still Daybreak Live on Dominion Television, and this is the big story. We've been talking about police brutality in the country. Let's take you through the history of police brutality in Nigeria. And of course, I still have with me in the studio this morning, Obadiwe, all the way from Lagos. All right, in 1966 to 1999, the military dictatorship era, which was described as a systemic use of police for political repression and human rights violations. Now, in the 2000s, we had the rise of SARS, increasing the report of extrajudicial killings, torture, and extortion. Now down to 2022 to 2024. Continued report, sporadic protests continued, lack of reform, implementation fuels public distrust. Now, I want to ask you this question this morning, Obadiwe. Why do you think Nigerian government ignored NSAS panel recommendations a few years ago?
I didn't get that.
Why do you think the Nigerian government ignored the NSAS panel recommendations?
You're talking about NSAS
panel recommendations, yes.
Implemented the recommendation.
Yes, in a state like Lagos or your state, there were recommendations by the NSAS panel, but till now, those reports have not been implemented in the states.
That is part of the system failure. Remember that immediately after the NSAS protest, that claimed several lives in Lagos and several other parts of the country, the government itself, raised a panel of inquiry to find out what led to NSAS protest and, of course, how to prevent a future recurrence of such revolution, because it's beyond the protest, it's a revolution, really. And at the end of the day, the panel came up with a white paper which was submitted to the government. And in the process, politics came to play. And the government, told us barefaced that the NSAS panel has not, really done well, blah, 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 blah. Just because the NSAS panel indicted the government in, the NSAS debacle. The government felt so bad, and the government was not bold enough to admit its own failure and make amends. It is needed. So,
are you saying the government? Are you
such a government to implement such a report? A government that is not ready, to admit its own shortcomings. A government that is not ready, that is not available to.
All right, I want to be clear on this one. Are you saying the government have failed to actually admit their own wrongdoings in the last NSAS protest? Are you there?
Hello?
I'm with you. Are you saying the government failed?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Are you saying the government failed to admit their own involvement in the last NSAS protest in the country?
Yes, it was widely reported. The government itself, when they received the white paper recommendations of the NSAS panel, they kicked against the recommendations of the panel. And, they made it appear like the panel dropped. Meanwhile, it was the same government that set up the panel of inquiry. You understand? So why did you set up the panel of inquiry when you knew that you were not going to take the recommendations of the panel, and that when you knew that you are going to waste the time of Nigerians, you are going to waste the time of the panel, the time of the media covering the panel? So it was a huge letdown for people who had expected something tangible to be done at the end of that panel of inquiry. Even the federal government, remember that it took President Muhammadu Buhari several days before he could address the nation about the NSAS. And we had report that the president did not act until he was told that the protest could lead to an overthrow of his own government. So he was much more interested in the overthrow of his government than in the sanity of the society. And when he came to address the nation, he addressed the disbandment of SARS, and he was proposing a replacement with another, a paramilitary organization, which Nigerians kicked against. And I can tell you categorically that in places like Lagos, SARS has actually returned, although in a different form, in a different name, but SARS has returned. You see people dressed in the notorious way that the defunct SARS, used to dress, and you see them stop on the road, stopping people. They come in different kind of names: anti-courtesan, anti-this, special squad, and so on and so forth. They are still there, and what we are trying to avoid has not gone away, and that is why that's why you had what happened in Ibadan on Tuesday, I guess, where the young chap was, brought down. It's a painful development that such a young man who is, serious about his future could be sacrificed by the nation or by the organization that is expected to protect him. By the way, let's commiserate with that family and the people of Oyo State on that. On the law.
Let me ask you this. Is the Nigeria police more of a threat to citizens than criminals?
Of course, the answer is, you and I know the answer. Nigeria police are expected to protect the citizens, but unfortunately, the same citizen you are expected to protect is the same citizen that you are harassing, is the same citizen that you are killing, is the same citizen that you do all sorts. Let's take this example. The Oyo State government is trying to push all the blames on the reckless driver, the father of the boy that died. But again, we should ask ourselves a question: what are you using a rifle to do to control traffic? It's probably in Nigeria or in some other failed state that you see policemen on the road carrying rifle to control traffic. Traffic offense are civil offenses. Why do you need to cost the tire of the vehicle? That's what? Is the person a criminal? Have you been able to establish that something that the law is not in support of, that warranted the use of a firearm? You are supposed to protect such a person. All you could have done is take details of the cab numbers and then go ahead and apprehend the person later on somewhere else, and not to open firearm against them. So that is what we are talking about: in poor training and poor understanding of rules of engagement. The Nigerian police still operate today with the mindset of the colonial era. They still operate today with the mindset of they are to protect the powers that be against the citizens. But it's the other way around. You are serving the citizens, because the money used to run the police is is part of what the citizens pay in terms of tax to the government. So you're supposed to protect the taxpayers against oppression, and not the other way around. So the problem is multifaceted, and until we are serious enough and we are practical enough to address this issue, we'll continue having this debate, we'll continue having this discussion over time. Reckless use of firearm it's out of it, and misplaced priorities is another thing. Misplaced priorities is another problem that we have here. Why would you be much more interested in protesters, for an instance, or in traffic offender, more, or Yahoo boys, so to say? Why are you more interested in those ones than the real criminals, in northern Nigeria? Today, we are talking about the military coming around to help Nigeria fight insurgency in northern Nigeria, which of course should ordinarily be the role of the police. But again, like I said, the police is much more interested in running after traffic offenders, in running after Yahoo boys, than running after the real criminals. And it's pathetic until we are ready to address this situation practically, and talking
about addressing the situation. How will Nigerians address this? And of course, demand for accountability when even politicians are using the police to settle political and personal scores.
Let me remind you of a popular quote by an American member of parliament. He said, "The power of the people is more than the people in power." Did you get that? The power of the people is more than the people in power. that shows that the power actually rests with the people. But when you choose, corrupt politicians ahead of, politicians whose records, when you support politicians based on ethnicity, religion, and party affiliation, you keep on having situations like this. So part of the problem is this: the leadership of the police, they keep on paying lip service to their oversight function. Do you know how many policemen that have been caught in the act, which police authorities have told us that they are going to investigate and punish? Now tell me, after the announcement of the investigation, tell me how many times the police came back to tell us that the investigations have been concluded and this is the result of our findings and this is action that we are going to take. We hear more of the start of investigation than the close of investigation in Nigeria. I told you a case of a policeman in Lagos who, allegedly raped an underage, and rather than being punished, rather than being made to face the full wrath of the law, because he had some godfathers who are in the police, they had to move him away from Lagos to somewhere else just for him to evade justice. So that is the problem. Look, let me tell you something. Nigerians are not too difficult to manage. Nigerians are naturally timid people. When they know that the law will take its course, regardless of who you are, regardless of the name you answer, regardless of who your godfather is, you'll see that people will fall in line, including the police.
Obadio, my last question for you this morning. My last question for you this morning before I let you go. Now, is there a realistic path to police reforms in Nigeria, or the system is to be totally dismantled and rebuilt from scratch?
Yes, we can do reforms. If you dismantle it's part of reforms because it's still going to be the police. Okay, now that takes us to the argument about state police, because if you look at politicians, they have been paying lip service to the institutionalism of state police, to the establishment of state police. They have made it a political, game rather than facing the reality. This is the time for Nigeria to start talking about state police, not just talking about it. It is the time to establish state police across the nooks and crannies of this country. So to reform the police is not difficult, and people in position of authority, they know this fact, but they are not interested because of the rot there is also serving them. You have more policemen protecting the elites, protecting the VVIPs than you have on my street here. You have more policemen, carrying the handbags of politicians' wives than you have policemen in the corners of our street. They know what to do and they know how to do it. There's a need for a total rebranding of the police, starting from the recruitment point to the point where you train and you train them over and over, and to the point where you ensure that the rule of law in the police is not tampered with, is not joked with. When a policeman goes against rule of engagement, when a policeman is caught in the act of committing a crime, don't try to protect him, because even if you dismantle the police and you put a new police in place, are they not going to be manned by the same people that we have in the system? Are we going to import people from America? Are we going to import people from Ghana? They are still going to be manned by the same people we have. All you just have to do is to change the name and probably change the color of their uniform and probably change the structure. But you are still going to have Nigerians there. So police reform is important. It is ripe. It is ripe. State police is important. It is ripe. It is time for us to have state police in place. Okay? Now, I mentioned, bending the rule to suit politicians. Look at the appointment of the IGP, for an instance. Why do we still have that IGP in office, despite the obvious reasons that he should have resigned or he should have been retired by now? We still have him in office. Doing what? As what? Does it mean that Nigeria does not have other qualified policemen to serve as the IGP? We need to empower our organizations. We need to empower our institutions to act in accordance with the law, regardless of who is there. We cannot keep on bending the laws all of the time to suit our purpose and we expect to have an improved police system or a different police. No, it is not going to work. Now, in the case of this Kehinde Alade that was, brought down in his prime in Ibadan, let's see what happens to the policeman who, was, caught in that act. Already, the government is trying to push, a narrative trying to blame the father of the boy solely. Of course, the man had fault. The man had fault as a father. Even if you are not a father, you are not expected to drive against traffic. That is not the way to go. But okay, he has driven against traffic. He's shooting using live bullets. The solution to him driving against traffic? No, that is not the solution. So the policeman and the man both have, a case to answer before the law. Let the law take its full course. Let the two of them face the full wrath of the law, and let nobody try to change the narrative, and let nobody try to, to come to the head of any one of them. Let the law take its full course. Because
talking about police brutality, we are still talking about police brutality. And then I want to ask you this question and quickly link it up with what you are currently saying. You mentioned state policing in Nigeria, and when at the time people were clamoring for state policing, but then some states claimed they can't afford it, while some states keyed into it. Now that's, for me, brought into place the Amotekun Corps in the southwestern part of Nigeria. As we speak, the Amotekun are also on the field. They are doing their job. But how about training and empowerment in terms of equipment? If you are talking about state policing, will they be able to truly empower them with the necessary tools and equipment they will be needing?
We are saying all of this as, let's say hypothesis, you understand? But as we speak, we already have organizations taking the form and shapes of state police. In Lagos, we have LASMA, is a form of state police. We have Neighborhood Watch, is a form of state police. In other southwestern states, we have Amotekun that you mentioned, which also is a form of state police. Now, that is state police. Let me answer the question you raised, or the concern that you said some people raised, that some states may not be able to, establish or fund their own state police. It is not important that we start state police across 36 states of the Federation at a go. No. 2-3 states can come together, like in the case of Amotekun, and have their own joint policing system if they think they don't have enough resources to fund their state police. All these things are excuses manufactured by politicians to ensure that that idea of state police does not materialize. They know what to do. Like I said, if state A cannot fund its own independent state police, why not merge with state B, C, the neighboring state, and come to terms, have some agreement that let us put in place a kind of our own policing system. We recruit from among the locals here. They are not, posting somebody from Maiduguri to come and man the police system in Ikeja. No, we are going to recruit people from Ikeja to be part of this police system. In Lagos, the Neighborhood Watch, the Lagos Neighborhood Watch, those ones that wear blue and yellow, they are recruited from the community where they live, and that is where they serve. That is where they serve. Now, talking about training and maybe giving them tools to work with. Of course, the state government who want to create state police should know that the responsibility will lie on their shoulders. They need to. It's the same thing that applies to this federal police that we have. Do they have enough training? Do they have enough equipment? Did you listen to the Borno State Governor, Baba Gana Zulum, saying that even the insurgents, they have more equipment, they are more equipped than even the Nigerian military. How much more the police? So that is even the federal police. So what stops us from going the route of having state police system? Even if federal police are not well equipped. So let us find a way of solving these problems. Let's find a way of solving this problem, because even the state governors, they are not empowered. We call them chief security officers of their state, but they are not chief security officers of their state. The CP in a state, that's Commissioner of Police in the state, will wait for directive from Abuja before he acts on anything. The state governor cannot give directive to a CP, and the CP will carry it out almost immediately, especially when such decisions are deemed to be against the interests of people in position of authority. So we are just trying to create alibi for what is not. State police is ripe. We are a people of more than 230 million people. We cannot afford to rely on a single policing system. It is not done anywhere in the world. Check all the nations that are as populated as Nigeria. They don't have a single federal police system. Go to a place like America. Some people will say America is more organized. Fine. You will go to universities, they have their own policing system. A university having its own policing system. What stops Nigerian state from going ahead with state police? They know what to do if they want to do state police. Somebody was saying that they need laws, they need to do this. When they wanted to change the national anthem, they didn't wait for anybody to change the national anthem. So if they want to institute the state police, they know how to do it and they know what to do. They are just paying lip service to that thing. And you know, the idea of state police has been on the front burner from the days when even the APC was in opposition. They were telling the PDP that, look, state police is the way to go. It was one of the loudest noise of the APC. But the moment they got to power, they forgot about the state police idea. They threw it away and they are now paying lip service to it. They know what to do. State police it's time for us to have state police in Nigeria. It's time for us to recruit residents to be the police of their own community, and not that you post somebody from Ibadan to go and be policing a community in Benue. What does he know about Benue? How much of Benue does he understand? So recruit the police from among us. It's part of a way of solving this problem that we are talking about. Until we are ready to do the needful, we'll continue going in circles and we'll continue paying lip service and we'll continue, we'll continue blaming this, blaming that until we are ready to make progress.
All right, the last question in 1 minute. In 1 minute before you go. Now, talking about community policing, state policing in Nigeria and the current state of jungle justice that currently happens in our communities. Now, in putting that side by side, how well do you think state policing will tackle jungle justice in the country? In 1 minute before we go. Are you there? Oh, he's not there. That's, Obadioye there, speaking all the way from Lagos State. He's a journalist, and of course, he knows his onions when it comes to security in the countries. I guess that is where we draw the curtains on today's edition of the big story on Daybreak Live. That was the big story on Daybreak Live. Police brutality remains a wound that Nigeria must confront with sincerity, urgency, and justice. The call is clear for a system that protects, not oppresses, that serves, not silences. Thank you for joining the conversation. Up next is Daybreak Sports with Boluaji Ogumola. Until next time on the big story, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay safe. This show is still Daybreak Live on Dominion Television. Don't go nowhere.